Okay, there we go. Okay, so let's say our bracha and then I'll mute everyone. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. Blessed are you, our Lord, our God, sovereign of the universe, who sanctified us with your commandments and given us the mitzvah of studying Torah and engaging with Torah.
You taught me that you shouldn't speak Lashon.
Okay, I've muted everyone. And so when you need to say something, please just unmute yourself as usual. So this is our last class. I'm a little bit sad because I feel like the group is really becoming a group and we're giving the feedback that we want. So I was going to actually ask, maybe you can think about it and maybe we'll discuss it at the end. I'm going to be teaching in the spring. I was going to teach prayer, but I can also teach another 4 sessions of Mussar. So you can weigh in on that at the end of the class. Think about what you'd rather learn. So the arc of the class is I'm just going to just review again the 4 components of Mussar, right? We study text, and then we journal or we talk about our experiences, and then we have feedback from others, and then we practice our sacred phrases and sacred practices. So I just wanted to clarify one thing from that I said about Mussar on Thursday. I said that Mussar is not about the other person, it's about us doing the work on ourselves to become, as we learned in class, an extraordinary, ordinary person, to become our best selves. And while that's true, we work on ourselves is not just to be better versions of ourselves, but also so we can have encounters with other people. So Mussar is really, it's for us, but it's for us on our own, and it's for us as we encounter other people as well. So I wanted to clarify that. So in other words, if you think of the traits that we've worked on, if we have more trust, if we have more patience, if we have more mindful speech, we're going to be able to relate to people in a better way. Also, in case it was unclear, I just want to know the third part of Mussar, like we said, first there's studying text and then there's journaling. And the third part is evaluating and giving each other feedback. So I wanted to say, especially to you, Marilyn, that I love the pushback. I appreciate the pushback. And the thing about Mussar is that it gets us to question the things that we thought that we knew about ourselves. And so hearing other people's perspectives, whether we agree with them or disagree with them, it's just helpful for always to hear other perspectives. So I really appreciate Marilyn's pushback and some of the people who were with her last week. So I'm glad you're back, Marilyn. I'm glad. I wanted to make that clear, that the idea of pushing back and evaluating, that's the process of Mussar. It's usually done in groups of either 2, or the largest groups it's usually done is 6, but 6 people in person. That they're called VODs, and that like little groups. And that's usually how Mussar is done. So I wanted to just say that. And then, so today we're going to talk about Hakarat Hatov, which is gratitude. The idea is that good is already there. We have lots of good in our lives, and the Mussar practice of gratitude is being fully aware that the good is already there. And this is particularly relevant as this weekend we have both Thanksgiving and Hanukkah. And then after we talk about the gratitude, we will talk about how the relationship between gratitude and generosity. So first, I just wanted to make space for any reactions to last week's class on Shmirat HaLashon, on mindful speech. If anybody had any specific instances of having mindful speech or not having mindful speech or curtailing it, if anybody wants to share any experience that they had around mindful speech, I'd like to open it up to that.
I had I got a little edgy in the supermarket at the checkout people who weren't listening to me, and I snapped at her, and I instantly pulled back, and then I apologized. I said, "I'm so sorry. That wasn't intended at you," and which I normally wouldn't apologize for that to her, but I did. I felt terrible, so it definitely struck me.
That's not great that you felt terrible, but great that you had the awareness. And that's a lot of what the Mussar is about. Because like any change, if you have the awareness, then you can try to work on it. Anybody else? Thank you for sharing, Lisa. Anyone else?
I just want to share.
Rita. Okay, Rita, then Rosalie, sorry.
So I sent this to Rabbi Sharon, and I told some people at Kiddush. But Joan, my dear friend Joan gave me this plaque.
I can hear Joan's voice saying that, you
Yeah,
know?
right. Yeah. So I just wanted to share that with you and bring her in a little too. But Marilyn and I have had very intense discussions about last week. And who
Who,
are these?
you and-
Marilyn and I.
Oh, okay.
And who are these guys saying that you can't say anything good? And if you can't say anything good, then you can't say anything bad. So we were like agreeing with each other anyway.
That's good. I'm telling you, the pushback is good. It's not that, a lot of these things, a lot of these traits are aspirational. In the perfect world, we would never say anything negative about anybody. And even if we said something positive, nobody would react negatively. That's the perfect world, which doesn't exist. But so a lot of them are aspirational. But, we just try the best we can. Anyone else? Rosalie, you wanted to say something.
Yeah, well, I was just going to say, like, I always call my sisters like every other day. So I was on the right way home and I'm talking to her and I'm about to tell her a story of something that happened. Nothing, but probably more gossipy than anything else, but she's my sister. And I stopped and I'm like, what good is this going to do? And why does she need to know this? She probably doesn't even know, if she knows who I'm talking about, it only put them in a bad light to her. And I said, no. And I just went on and, when I found that the conversation was I'm not going to say it was boring, but it was more like, how are you? How are you? How are the kids? But it made me feel better at the end because I said it served no purpose. Yet it was something that, you just do because it's your sister and you just, chit chat. And I found it was hard, but it felt better. It felt better because we got off the phone and it was like, good. That made no sense anyway to talk about. So I don't know. So it was hard, you stop because what else do you talk about when you talk to your sister every other day?
So I don't think we're gonna I wanted to talk a little bit.
Beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. Beverly still got the video going from last week. Okay. Anybody else? Anything from last week? Letty, yes.
Okay, I'd like to say something, but it's in the form of an anecdote. Is that okay?
Sure.
Okay, I'm going to say two.
Phrases and the sacred practices, because I think that those are.
Okay, I'm not sure. Anyone have any suggestions about how to help Beverly turn off the recording from last week?
I think she should get off and get back on today's
She's my Mussar.
link that was sent on.
So
Yeah, I think you should, you should ask her to leave.
heard the song at the
Yeah,
beginning.
leave and get back on today's link.
Lips from deceitful speech. And
Okay,
then-
Beverly, I'm not sure. Beverly, can you hear us?
and from the Jerusalem Talmud, the gossipers
Um,
stand in Syria.
Can somebody call Beverly? Can someone has Beverly's number? Can you please call her?
I'll go up there.
Human
I'll go up
fingers.
there and see if I can.
Marilyn's going up. Marilyn?
Oh, you're in the same building. Oh, thank you. Thank you so much, Marilyn. That's very sweet of you.
No, she's back again.
Okay.
Maybe it'll be.
Yeah, but if I mute everybody, then the people who want to speak can't speak. So I don't want to, Okay, we're there. Who was speaking? Who was speaking? I don't remember.
I was.
Letty, I'm sorry. Thank you.
This is in the form of an anecdote. I'm going to say two names that some people will recognize, many of you won't. The names are Oscar Levant and Dinah Shore. Oscar Levant was a very accomplished pianist, but he was also a sardonic, grumpy raconteur that he did while he was playing the piano. And Dinah Shore was a very popular singer and daytime show host of the time. And Oscar Levant once said that he loved her. He loved Dinah Shore because she was upbeat and sunny, and he never heard her say a harsh word about anybody. And then he said he couldn't be with her because he was afraid he would get diabetes. And my point is that I think even with all the sweetness and sugar in the world, with not speaking Lashon Hara, we do need a little salt and pepper in our lives. And I don't know if I would want to be in a world where there were all dinosaurs. We need a little bit of, what happens with comedians and satirists and Shakespeare, who was the greatest put down artist in the world? Are they all speaking Lashon Hara? I think we need a little bit in our lives too. Otherwise it'd be a
I
very
hear.
dull dull
I
existence.
hear that. I hear that. I think it would be a very boring world. That idea of, I think that's why we don't, utopia doesn't exist, because if utopia actually existed, I think everybody would think it was boring. Look what happened in the Garden of Eden. How long did that last? You know, if you read, if you take the Torah literally, you're talking days, right? They were not able to not eat from the tree that they weren't, but they were in Eden. That was it. That was as good as it was ever going to get. And they weren't able to do it. So it's not really in our nature. But thank you for sharing that, Letty. Anyone else? I'll share. Oh, yes, Bob, go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, hi, everybody. I actually watched some of the recording last week, not the whole thing, unfortunately, but I was sort of always have this kind of question of, when I find myself, I'm in the middle of discussion about, call it gossip or Lashon Hara, and it kind of sounds like it, looks like it, feels like it, and I sort of don't know whether to extricate myself or say something. And I don't know whether you kind of got into that last week in terms of, because as a listener, you're part of it.
Right.
And
right.
You kind of don't want to be rude. At the same time, you're uncomfortable.
Well, we did
So-
talk about that a little bit. I'll just in 2 seconds, I'll just tell you, we said that either you could ask the person, I prefer not to hear that. It's making me uncomfortable. Or the Talmud had a fabulous suggestion. It said, our fingers are made to look like pegs so we can plug our ears when, very subtle, when somebody's speaking Lashon Hara, we can just plug our ears. But, if any speech makes you feel uncomfortable, you should be able to say to the other person, this is speech that's making me feel uncomfortable. There was one instance this week when a colleague asked me about somebody, and in a professional capacity, and we were talking about the person, and then I added one piece of information, and I realized, what, that wasn't really necessary. I didn't have to add that piece of information, and the fact that I was thinking about it, that was about the mindful speech. I mean, of course, it was already done, it was already out there, but I was thinking, why did that really wasn't necessary. That wasn't exactly what I needed to, to get the information across to my colleague. So the idea is, again, to just have, raise our awareness about these different traits. Someone's doggy. Okay, at least it's not me speaking from last week. Barbara, you want to say something?
Yes. But there's the flip side to all of this. I didn't bring this up last week, but when I was working in corporate America, we had a rule, it was in the employee manual, that if an employee left and then somebody later on called for a recommendation, you could only say, yes, the person worked here from this date until that date. And you could not say anything else. So obviously the legal eagles were behind this rule. But I had at least one, possibly 2 really bad experiences about this, because the people who were trying to hire my former employee assumed that because I wouldn't say anything else, that there were terrible things that I wasn't going to say. And there was no way for me to signal. I couldn't even say my employers only allow us to give that. I said that, but it was a very uncomfortable thing. In both cases, the person was very, left for legitimate reasons, and it wasn't, I would have said nice things about them.
Right. So I understand that the legal beagles, they have their own, their own set of rules, but, according to Mussar, you are allowed, you would be allowed to say something like those types of situations. You can be honest. The same thing with what we talked about a shidduch. Anyway, so I'm not going to ask you to journal now because we're not in person. If we were in person, I would ask that. But I wanted to ask you two questions. We're switched to the gratitude. So the first is we talk about having gratitude. We all want to have gratitude. We do have gratitude. But my question is, what makes it hard for you to access your gratitude sometimes, right? What gets in the way of you being able to feel gratitude? That's the first question. And the second one is, what makes it easier for you to feel gratitude? So you want to just throw out some quick ideas? What makes it hard for you to access your gratitude, and what makes it easy for you to feel gratitude?
I find it easy to be, I mean, there are times that we are not, but I find it easy when I think of the good things that I have in my life and don't
Mhm.
dwell sometimes on the things that might have been bad, or, other things that I try and push away, and just dwell on what I have, because
Right.
I don't know what I'm going to have. I know what I had before, so I can only be grateful for what's going on today, because otherwise you don't know what's going on tomorrow.
What about anybody else have something that, makes them not feel as grateful, or some blocks their gratitude?
I do.
Yes, Sandy.
If somebody does something for me begrudgingly, doesn't really want to, all right, I don't really want to do this, but I'll do it. That makes it harder for me to feel gratitude, because they're not like gracious about it. But if somebody is very generous and giving and warm and does something for me, no expectation of being anything returned, then that makes it very easy to do gratitude. For example, when I came out of came out of Whole Foods today, and I had bought a large number of groceries, including a box of Pellegrino, which I couldn't carry. So I asked for somebody to carry it out for me, to help me to pack it in my car. And they're not allowed to take tips. And this young man came, he packed everything. He didn't have to do it. He packed everything into my car for me. And I said, would you be allowed to take a tip? And he said, no, I'm sorry, we're not allowed to take a tip, but don't worry about it. I'm happy to do it. And I certainly felt gratitude to him. I said, he did a good
So
thing.
that's
Something like that will make it very easy to feel gratitude.
right. But that's gratitude based on what somebody else does. I guess I was asking more what's inside of us, like I'll just say, I mean, just, what could block gratitude? Frustration could block gratitude, or ego, or you're feeling angry, maybe not even at the person specifically, but you're just feeling anger in general about something else, disappointment. For me, I know what blocks my gratitude would be familiarity. Sometimes if something is it's so familiar to me that I forget that it's a blessing in my life, whatever the it is. So there's, those kinds of things that can block our gratitude. And then when you think about what, could enhance your gratitude, feeling connected to other people, feeling calm, we can feel gratitude. If you're already in a good mood, that's what you were saying, Rosalie, you're predisposed to it. If you feel like you're in control of your life, you might feel that you have more gratitude. So it's interesting. There's an 11th century Mussar classic called Duties of the Heart, written by Rabbi Ibn Pakuda. And he says that there are three things, this is the 11th century, keep people from being grateful. One is becoming too occupied with material things, which is interesting because we think of that now, but he wrote in the 11th century. He said the other thing is when we take things for granted, which is what I was feeling, and when we focus on the negative, right? When we focus on the mistakes that people make and the small hurts that they inflict on us. So the Mussar teachings on the attitude of gratitude are kind of tough because they don't let us feel sorry for ourselves, no matter how little we may have. Like one Mussar master began a talk with a thump. He came and he thumped on the table and he said, it's enough for a human being to be alive. And that was his end of his talk. You're alive, that's it. Doesn't matter what else is going on. You should be feeling gratitude. So I'm going to share my screen now. Source sheet. Oh, look at this. So we're going to learn from our teacher, Dr. Marinis from Everyday Holiness. For those of you who might be new, this is the book that we are, I don't know if anyone can see it. That's the book that I've taken a lot of my studying from called Everyday Holiness. So he says, when you open yourself to experience gratitude, you discover with clarity and accuracy how much good there is in your life. Whatever you are lacking will still be missing, of course. And in reaching for gratitude, no one is saying you should have to put on rose-colored glasses to obscure the shortcomings. The obstacles to appreciating the good can be very real, especially when life is riven by suffering. But it's worth the effort to practice gratitude, especially because the one who benefits the most is the one who is suffering. There's no limit to what we don't have. And if that is where we focus, then we will inevitably be filled with dissatisfaction. It's also true that if we are aware of our gifts, we come to take them for granted. When gratitude is a living reality, well established in our hearts, however, we constantly refresh our vision so that we make accurate note of the good that surrounds us. Love like that, and you will suddenly discover that you want to give thanks for anything or anyone who has benefited you, whether they meant to or not. Imagine a prayer of thanks springing to your lips when the driver in the next car lets you merge without protest, or when you flip the switch and there's electricity to light your room, or your refrigerator is filled with food. When gratitude is well established and flowing, it's a sign of a heart that has been made right and whole. Gratitude can't coexist with arrogance, resentment, and selfishness. And I want to read you something else from Rav Nachman of Bratslav, who lived in he only was 38 years old. He lived in the end of the 1700s. Gratitude rejoices with her sister Joy and is always ready to light a candle and have a party. Gratitude doesn't much like the old cronies of boredom, despair, and taking life for granted. So I have to tell you now, Rav Nachman, it was pretty well known that he suffered from very severe depression. And this is what he's saying about gratitude, which is pretty amazing. So maybe we can't always conjure up feelings of love, but can we conjure up feelings of gratitude? I don't know. What do you think? I sometimes wonder about that. Can't force yourself to love something, but I think wondering if you can force yourself to find something good, if we can free ourselves to find something to feel grateful for, no matter what is facing us. I want to look at a biblical source here. This is from Deuteronomy, from Devarim 23. You shall not abhor an Edomite, for they are your kinsmen, and you should not abhor an Egyptian, for you are a stranger in their land. So this is saying that you're not supposed to hate your enemy, right? Rashi is saying, do not abhor an Egyptian completely, although they cast your male children into the river, right? So the Egyptians cast the male babies into the river, and then they enslaved us. But why should you not hate them completely? Because they provided you shelter in the time of need, right? If you remember, when Jacob and his sons, I mean, that's what we're actually going to be reading about next week, when there's a famine in the land, and Egypt is the only one, because of Joseph's brilliance and harvest it. First of all, he was able to interpret the dream that there was going to be 7 years of plenty followed by 7 years of famine. So when Jacob, who lived in Canaan, there was nothing to eat. So in the end is Jacob and all of his children, right? They went down to Egypt. We read about that in the Haggadah. They went down to Egypt to get food, and they got food and they had shelter. And before they became slaves, they were enslaved, they had a good life there. So that's what Rashi is saying, that we're supposed to remember that. This is a very high level for gratitude. It's not easy at all, being grateful for people who have done us wrong, because we can experience learning from this. Those who also hurt us within reason, they teach us things. I have one rabbi friend who says the good doesn't negate the bad, and the bad doesn't negate the good. So does this mean a person should feel grateful for an abuser because the abuser fed them and clothed them and sheltered them? I mean, I don't think that that's where this is going, But I suppose that question could be asked. Like I said, I don't ever think a person should be grateful for abuse, but maybe when they get out of that situation, they could be grateful for from what they learned in that situation. I think that could be a possibility. Rabbi Shlomo Wolbe, who's also a very well-known Mussar giant, and he was author of the classic text called Alei Shur, and he lived from 1914 to 2005. He was born, I believe, in Germany, and his end of his life was in Israel. So he talks about the gratitude. Gratitude is a midah, is a trait that intellectually we know is necessary and is a very lovely midah. So why then are we often so ungrateful? And why is being ungrateful a trait that is rooted in us as far back as the beginning of time, right? Like that's what happened with Adam and Eve. They took the Garden of Eden for granted. If one appreciates that all the needs one has fulfilled by others are truly goodness and kindness, one most certainly increases love and friendship in the world and comes to realize that one exists in a world of kindness. When one hides from this recognition, the world is gray. One's perception is that every person is only doing one's own job. Each person only wants to profit. The doctor only wants payment. The educator only a salary. There's no goodness, no kindness, and no friendship. The world is sucked dry. No, we want to live in a bright world, a world full of goodness and kindness, love and friendship. This illuminated world is built through the showing gratitude to all. So the questions I have on this are, Wolbe asks us why we are so ungrateful. How would you answer that question? And also, how would you respond to Rabbi Wolbe's description of a world of gray versus a bright world? What do you think makes a difference between the two? So I'm just curious if anyone has thoughts on if gratitude is something that we all want to do, why are we so ungrateful so many times? And I'm opening that up if anyone wants to answer that.
Well, to me, I think sometimes people are so used to the gifts that they have that they forget to be grateful for them, and they're just looking for more or different ones. And I don't think sometimes you just don't stop and say you're grateful because you're looking for the next gift or the next thing to be grateful for. And you're just always chasing. It's like we're always talking about a lot of these Mussar traits. There always seem to be chasing after something, and sometimes we get it and sometimes we don't. And I think it's the same thing with gratitude. I'm very happy today because I got this, but what am I going to get next? Something, like a child would do, basically, not an adult.
Right. That was my thought. Very interesting. Yeah. Thank
Rabbi?
you. Yes.
I think we all have expectations, and we expect this of our children, we expect this of our careers, we expect this of our spouse or whatever. And or even we expect certain things materially. And when those expectations don't come to fruition, it's easy to not feel gratitude. I think the key for me at this point in my life is finding the gifts, even though it hasn't worked out, finding the gifts in that and being grateful for what it is, as opposed to what I expected it to be.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. I like that. My father, may he rest in peace, he used to say, don't have any expectations and you won't be disappointed. And, he was a very happy person. Unfortunately, he died when he was young, but he really had a real joie de vivre and a real appreciation for a lot of things in life because he didn't expect, and he was just always so thrilled when something happened.
My mother said the same thing, but it wasn't said in the same spirit, because the stress was on, don't expect anything, suppress, essentially suppress all expectation of anything, which
Right.
then ends up with a darker view of life. But I agree. I think there are cultural aspects as well that not necessarily the very larger culture, but but smaller ones. My grandson is in the Army, and he was grousing about this and grousing about that and grousing, and I said, I understand that all these things are real, and I understand that there's a kind of a cultural thing in the Army in which it's part of the game that everyone plays to complain about stuff. But I think you'll be happier if you also think about everything that you are getting from your experience in the Army.
Mhm. And was he was he buying your wisdom or no?
I think he was.
Good.
He nodded. I mean, that's the most I got. But
Okay. So it's interesting when you talked about, it's so interesting that you said, did your was it your mother or your grandmother who you said had the opposite, had said the same thing my dad said? Was your mom? So it's interesting because I was wondering, that was my second question, Walby's description of a gray world versus a brighter world, and what makes the difference between the two. And that's really interesting, that it just goes to, that you can just say the same thing and two people can see it and act on it so differently. I guess I think of the bright world, the illuminated world is the world of God, that God is light and we bring light into the world. We bring God's light into the world when we do God's work and when we bring goodness to the earth, which is like the perfect tie-in for Hanukkah, which is just in a few days, about bringing the light into the darkness of the world. Anybody else?
I have my hand raised.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I can't see. When I have the screen share, I can't see. That's why you just have to jump in there. Thanks, Barbara. Yeah.
Well, I wanted to say that it could be biological. Some of us have seasonal affective disorder.
Mhm.
And when there is very little light, like between September and March,
Mhm.
which we're in now, it's very difficult. I wouldn't say that you get into clinical depression, but it's very, very difficult. And I do not keep a gratitude journal in the summer, but starting September 21st until March 21st, I do. Because I used to keep a journal that said one good thing that happened today.
Mhm.
But sometimes I couldn't find anything. So I changed it. My sister was the one who suggested it. So I write down, I start with the words I am grateful. And I
Right.
just have to write something down every morning from the day before. And anybody else who has this condition, there's practically nothing you can do with it unless it's far, far worse, except sit in front of a light. But
Right.
well, you can recognize it. And the other thing that I found very helpful is that I tell everybody. So all my friends know about this. So that they see me heading into self-pity, they usually don't let me get away with it.
Well, first of all, thank you for sharing that. And that idea of keeping the gratitude journal, I mean, you've been doing it for a long time. I mean, that's part of what the trait of gratitude is. So you really must feel that Hanukkah, that need to put the light into the world. Yeah, that's beautiful. So, Rabbi Eliezer, who's that?
Marilyn again.
Hi, sure.
I was at a earlier class today, a JTS class, and the rabbi was talking about that he keeps a gratitude journal, and he keeps it every evening. And often he thinks he's had a really rotten day, and he comes home and he's just, angry and frustrated and so on. And the way he keeps the journal is to say, I thank Hashem for this day. And then he simply writes down everything that happened during the day. And as he's writing, he comes to realize all the nice things that happened to him. and the sources of frustration kind of drift away because he realizes that that wasn't the dominant part of his day. In fact,
Right.
Could I add to that? I'm gonna watch the recording of that, but I was in another class at the time. But some of us,
Who was that? Which teacher was that?
Elias Diamond.
Diamond.
Oh, Elias Diamond. Yeah, I love him. He was one of my professors in rabbinical school. Yeah.
Yeah,
Some of us, including Rabbi Perlman, were at the Thanksgiving service at the band shell yesterday, and Rabbi Mishkin gave the Thanksgiving message, and he talked about his study, which I don't know how much I buy into the scientific facts of this study, but he talked about, so I don't know, it's a psychology professor or someplace like that, somebody like that, who divided his class into groups, and one group had to write down every day 5 things they were thankful for, and one group had to write down every day things that bothered them, that were hassling them that day. And the upshot of the study was presumably these other people were happier, they were nicer to other people, and so on. As I said, I can't corroborate all that stuff, but I don't think it's a bad idea to think about that.
That's a great idea. I agree. Okay. Rabbi Eliezer Papo, when he was living in, also the same time as the Kotzker Rebbe, as Rav Nachman of Bratslav, rather. So it's written in Mishlei that evil will never leave the home of a person who pays back evil for good. A person who has received the smallest benefit from one's friend is obligated to permanently engrave on one's heart not to repay one's friend with any evil, and to bestow whatever favors one can upon this. Even if this person has wronged you, you must forgive the wrong and forget and not forget the good. This is because a person needs to emulate one's maker, as it is written in Isaiah, even these I will forget, referring to the making of the golden calf, but I will not forget you. So that's like God is remembering, God loves us, even though our ancestors committed that sin of the golden calf and worshiped the golden calf instead of God. And then it says, go and learn from Moshe Rabbeinu, who did not strike the Nile River and the dust because he received benefit from them, right? So that's because when they were bringing the plagues on the Egyptians, Moses was not going to turn the Nile into blood, because the Nile is what saved Moses from when he was a baby, when his mother put him in the basket. So again, highly aspirational. Even if the person has wronged you, you must forget the wrong and not forget the good. And so I don't know, you don't have to answer this out loud, but can you think of a situation where you were able to do this, when somebody treated you in a way that was very hurtful, and you were able to in some way get past that and be grateful for whatever part of it you can be grateful for? Or can you think of a situation when it was very difficult to do that? Because again, highly aspirational. So there's the idea also in Mussar, this idea of God. I'm sorry, who's that?
I have a situation, it didn't happen to me, but it happened to somebody else. My mother had some family who were in Auschwitz. She had cousins, and they came. The ones that survived, they moved. They came to Canada after the '57 revolution in Hungary, and she spoke to them. And there were 2 sisters. There were more sisters, but the 2 sisters survived. They were in Auschwitz together, and they had the periodic weeding out, where people walked up to the guard, and the guard sent one way and one another way.
Mhm.
And you knew that one way was to live and the other way was to die. So the 2 sisters walked up to the guard, and he was sending one way and the other way. And they clung to each other and said to the guard, "We don't care which way you want to send us. Just let us stay together."
Mhm.
whichever way you want to send us, we just want to be together. And so he let them go the right way, and they both survived thanks to this
Wow.
man. And they were, although this is a terrible person, as a guard in a concentration camp, they were grateful to him because he, in effect, saved
Allow
both
them.
their lives. Even though they did terrible things to them, they still felt that gratitude because of that one kindness that he did. Maybe
Yeah.
that one kindness is the thing that will save his soul. Who knows? But he
Well,
did.
so that's a really good tie into the next thing I wanted to talk about is that there's the idea in Mussar of Gam Zu Latova, which means this is also for the good. Okay. We're going to read a story, a short story about this. Rabbi Akiva was walking along with a lamp, a rooster, and a donkey. He was looking for a room at the inn, but he was turned away. So whatever God does is for the good. That's this Gamzu Latova. Okay, he told himself. So he took his lamp, his rooster, and his donkey, and he slept in an open field. During the night, the wind blew out the lamp, a weasel ate the rooster, and a lion ate the donkey. And Rabbi Akiva said, Gamzu Latova, whatever God does is for the good. Later that evening, a marauding troop came to the town, and took everyone into captivity. Rabbi Akiva was spared because had his rooster crowed, or had the donkey brayed, or had the lamp glowed, he would have been discovered. So what I like about this story, that feels like it combines the three Mussar traits that we've studied so far, right? Rabbi Akiva had to have the trust, the bitachon, that he didn't know the whole picture, but that God did, and that Rabbi Akiva had to lean into the trust. He also needed patience, especially because he didn't know what the outcome was going to be of not having a room and sleeping in the field. And in the end, Rabbi Akiva was grateful to God for the miseries of the lamp going out, the rooster and the donkey having been eaten, because these negative things actually turned out to be blessings in disguise, and they helped to save his life. So there's a source in the Talmud, in Talmud Ta'anit. His name was Nachman Ish Gamzu, right? Like Gamzu Latova. So a righteous person who at the end of his life was destitute, blind, unable to use his limbs, and afflicted with illness. And yet he always said, Gamzu Latova, right? This is also for the good. So I tell you, I have a friend, someone I've known for a long time, since we were high school. And her husband, just recently, her husband, right after Yom Kippur, he got some sort of a staph infection. He was a couple weeks before his 70th birthday. He got a staph infection, which was in his spine and his brain. And he was a very positive kind of a man. And he always said, I have everything, yesh li kol. Everything is always good. I have everything I need. So he got sicker and sicker. Unfortunately, he passed away. But before he passed away, he got sick right after Yom Kippur, and he died right after Sukkot. So he was not sick very long. A man who was totally healthy before that. So before he slipped into a coma, his wife, my friend, his wife of 45 years, said to him, "You're lying here like this. Do you still feel that you have everything?" And he looked at her and he shook his head and he said, "Yes." And that was the last thing he ever said to her before he slipped into a coma, and he died a few days later. So saying Gamzu Latova, this is also for the good, is a really, really hard spiritual practice. But when it's done sincerely, it can really have a very powerful impact on your life, or even as this person on the end of life. I had a teacher in high school, Rabbi R, I won't say his name, but when you asked him how he was, he would say, Baruch Hashem, lousy. Thank God I'm lousy. Of course, as a high school kid, as a teenager, I thought he was nuts, but I realized what he was trying to, maybe he was trying to teach us, maybe he was just trying to teach himself. I'm not really sure. But the idea that when we change the perception of our lives, then we can change our lives, right? If we're able to see something good, instead of focusing on what we don't have, we try to spend more time focusing on what we do have. And that when we say thank you, especially for the challenges, so gratitude doesn't mean like a perfunctory thank you. It's something that the thank you that we say, the gratitude, it's not just, somebody gives you change and you say thank you. It has to be something that you feel. The practice of saying it is something that comes from a deep well inside of us, because the gratitude lives in our heart, not so much in the behavior. And that a heart filled with gratitude gives us the resources that can help us face whatever we're going to encounter in life. A grateful heart is a solid platform for which to reach out and take care of others as well as ourselves, because this orients us toward the resources we have, not what we lack. An attitude of optimism and joy ensues, and it is to foster that outlook that we practice gratitude throughout our day. The intention is that the seeds we plant in practice will sprout, and then we will find ourselves experiencing flashes of gratitude as we go about the ordinary activities of our day. So this is the perfect segue into a wonderful teaching that I heard by Rabbi Shai Held, who's the president of Hadar, also a JTS graduate, a conservative rabbi. And he gave a session for rabbis only on Rosh Chodesh Cheshvan, which was about, he said, that there was a nexus between gratitude and generosity. I remember when I was asked in my Mussar class, what blocks you from feeling gratitude and what enables your gratitude. So what enables my gratitude is when I feel a generosity of spirit. When I have a generosity of spirit, I can find gratitude in all kinds of things. So that's what Rabbi Shai was talking about the difference, the nexus between gratitude and generosity. So I just want to look at a biblical and a Talmudic source, okay? So in Psalm 100, verse 3, we say, acknowledge that the Lord is God. He made us and we are his. Sorry about the his. Anyway, God's people, the flock God tends. So Rabbi Levi, in the name of Rav Hanina, says, for every single breath that a human being takes, he should offer praise to the Creator. What is the reason? Because the scripture says, which we say in Psalm 150, Kol hanshama tahalel, to every soul, every neshama praises God, and every breath praises God. So this Psalm 100 is talking about that we have to acknowledge that God made us. We didn't make ourselves. We didn't create ourselves. God made us God's self, and we're God's people. And we have to hold this awareness all the time, that the idea that we didn't create ourselves. Because if you created yourself, then you don't have to be indebted to anyone. And Rabbi Shai also talks about the idea of grace. And he says that unfortunately, grace sounds like a very Christian value, but he said it's really a very Jewish value, because grace means that which we did not earn, but God gives us anyway, right? So there's nothing we could have done to earn having life, but God gives us life. God shines God's grace on us and gives us life. So for Rabbi Held, gratitude is not a feeling, but a posture of how I carry myself in the world. Feelings ebb and flow, right? If we're married or in a long-term relationship, we choose to want to be in that relationship every day. We work on that relationship. And Rabbi Shai is saying we can also choose to be grateful every day, to work on finding the good in our lives. And that when we really feel gratitude, it teaches us to pay forward what we have, right? In Vayikra, we talk about the Korban Todah, which is the sacrifice when we were doing sacrifices, the sacrifice that we give when we want to say thank you to God, a sacrifice of thanksgiving. It says, and the flesh of his thanksgiving sacrifice of well-being shall be eaten on that day it is offered. None of it shall be set aside until morning. The Korban Todah, the sacrifice of thanksgiving, has to be eaten the day it's offered. If there are leftovers, then you haven't truly been grateful. Because if you were really grateful, you would want others to know, and you would invite them to share the meal with you, and there would be nothing left over. Remember, when they gave a sacrifice, they brought a whole animal, a whole cow. So that's some barbecue. You really can't eat it yourself. In order to finish it, you need to invite a lot of people to be with you, right? So you should share with others if you're grateful, and if you're truly grateful, then you want to give to others. A grateful heart overflows, and therefore generosity is part of the definition of gratitude. Rabbi Yitzchak Hutner lived in, he is from Poland. He actually was one of the rabbis in the Warsaw Ghetto, okay? And he was obviously liberated. When a person receives a benefit from his fellow, a seed of chesed, of loving kindness, is planted in his inner world. If the nature of chesed is functioning healthily and properly, the seed cannot but give rise to additional chesed. But if the person is an ingrate, it's as if he uproots the sproutings of chesed with his bare hands. Without a doubt, uprooting a planting of chesed is even more antithetical to the essence of chesed than simply being uninvolved in matters of chesed. An ingrate damages and destroys the very attribute of chesed, right? So a grateful heart overflows and wants to be generous. I guess it's like there's a saying in the Talmud that Averah goreret averah. When you do one sin, it causes another. And then there's also mitzvah, goreret mitzvah. When you do one mitzvah, it leads to another. And I think that gratitude is the same way. Gratitude leads to more gratitude. If you wind up, if you're able to find gratitude and practice gratitude, then the more gratitude you're going to find. And the converse is also true. If you're going to look for the negative, you can find negative in any situation and in any person. You meet somebody new, you can think negative. If you want to find something negative in them, you will. And if you want to find a reason to like them, you're going to find that too. In Genesis, when God speaks to Abraham, one of those first times, and God tells Abraham, I spoke about this actually in Lech Lecha, when God says, look up to the sky and count the stars if you can count them. Part of that is when God says to Abraham, you will be blessed and you will be a blessing. Okay. So God is saying to Abraham, I will bless you. And by being blessed, you will also bless others. By getting something, we also want to give something, because our blessings not only flow to us, but our blessings flow through us. We are blessed. The blessing is within us. And then the blessing comes out when we bless somebody else. Go to my next source is by Miroslav Wolf in a book called Free of Charge, Giving and Forgiving in a Culture Stripped of Grace. God gives so that we can exist and flourish, but not only for that. God gives so that we can help others exist and flourish as well. God's gifts aim at making us generous givers, not just fortunate receivers. God gives so that we, in human measure, can be givers too. The same double blessing, referring to Abraham's double blessing, that you will be blessed and you will be a blessing, is given to us. If we just enjoy good things without passing them on, if we are blessed without being a blessing, then we fail in our purpose as channels. We are givers because we were made that way. And if we don't give, we're at odds. We're fighting our own nature. We are not simply the final destination in the flow of God's gifts. Rather, we find ourselves midstream, so to speak. The gifts flow into us and they flow on from us. We are not just intended recipients of God's gifts, we are also their channels. And as channels, we exist not just to enjoy things, but also to pass on. Our purpose is twofold: to flourish and to help other people flourish. And this is the crux of Mussar study, right? To help us relate to others in a way that brings out our best selves. So the cultivation of gratitude is to appreciate all that we've been given. And to say that I didn't make my own life and I didn't buy it, and I didn't do it all by myself. I think it was Mark Twain who said, a self-made man is like a self-laid egg. It just doesn't exist. And to be grateful is to be generous, and genuine gratitude is what Rabbi Shai said, which I thought was so beautiful. He said that genuine gratitude is a spiritual rebellion against the culture we inhabit, a culture of what can I get? Rather, when we practice gratitude and we give to others, it's a culture of what can I give? It's not about what I can get. It's about what I can give to others. I don't know if anyone has any thoughts on that. I just thought the idea of being having gratitude leading to generosity, I think it feels like it resonates to me. And that if we're feeling the gratitude and that we want to give to others, usually I think that they go hand in hand. So let's look at some sacred phrases from Rabbi Amy Eilberg that we can cultivate if we're not feeling the gratitude and we need something to hang on to help us feel gratitude. The first one is the Moda, or the Modeh Ani prayer, Moda Ani, which I love. Grateful am I. And what I love about Modeh Ani is that it doesn't say I am grateful. It's Modeh. It's grateful am I. Sort of like Yoda from Star Wars. Grateful am I, hungry am I, tired am I? That's how he would speak. So grateful am I, living and eternal sovereign, for your kindness in restoring my soul. How great is your faithfulness. We say this on waking up every morning. Before we even get out of bed, that's what we're supposed to say. And also from our morning prayers, we have the Asher Yatzar prayer that we're supposed to say every time we go to the bathroom. Blessed are you, nameless one, our God, sovereign of all worlds, who shaped the human being with wisdom, creating for us all the openings and vessels of the body. It is revealed and known before your throne of glory that if one of these passageways opens when it should be closed or becomes blocked when it should be open, one could not stay alive and stand before you. Blessed are you, God, healer of all flesh, one who does wonders. This is also from the morning prayer. And then, so these are the things we're supposed to say first thing in the morning when we wake up. And then there's another one called Elohai Neshama. May my God, the soul which you gave me is pure. You created it, you formed it, you breathed it into me, and you guard it within me. I love that one. And from Psalms 92, how vast are your works, O God. Your designs are beyond our grasp. And then Modim from the Amidah, Modim anachnu lach, we are grateful to you, God, right? And we bow deeply when we say Modim anachnu lach. And who is rich? The one who is happy with what they have. And that's from Pirkei Avot, and also from Psalm 92, Tov lahodot l'Hashem, it's good to give thanks to the Lord and to sing praises to your name, O Most High, to proclaim your goodness in the morning and your faithfulness at night. And then another suggestion she had is to search in Psalms or Proverbs or another text that speaks to you to find a verse that begins with the first letter of your Hebrew name and ends with the last letter of your Hebrew name, and make that your verse to meditate on. To do this, you might want to look at Psalm 19, because Psalm 19 is an acrostic, but it's very, very long because there are 22 letters in the Hebrew alphabet. And Psalm 19 has 8 verses that begin with each, 8 verses with Aleph, 8 verses with Bet, 8 verses with Gimel. It's a very long psalm. So you might find a psalm there, a verse there that speaks to you. And suggested Kabbalot, suggested practices is each day resolve to find 5 non-liturgical, non-prayer moments to bring grateful awareness to mind. This is over and above the 100 brachot that we're required to say every day. So according to the Talmud, we're supposed to say 100 blessings every day, every time you eat something, every time something happens to you. I'll tell you, it was very interesting. Today, I was driving someplace. I was not even a mile from my home, and I was waiting for a light to change. And the light changed, and I'm in the intersection, and I see a sanitation truck is speeding down, like coming perpendicular toward me. I don't know if he didn't see or he wasn't watching. I got really, anyway, at the last second, he jammed on his brakes and he stopped, but he was going to just come right into me onto the driver's side. And I said a prayer right then and there. I said, thank you, God, that this truck, that he, whatever came to, or whatever God made him come to, and he put on his brakes. So there's 100 times a day when you can say a bracha, when you eat something, when you drink something, hatov metiv, which is a bracha that just says, oh, beautiful things. You see a beautiful flower, a beautiful sunset, a beautiful sunrise, a beautiful park. You can thank God for that too. It's interesting because the word bracha, right? We make 100 brachot a day. The word bracha comes from the same root as the Hebrew word berech, which means knee. So when we say a blessing, it is if we are bending our knee in an act of gratitude. We can also, each day, we can express gratitude to 3 people, even for small things. And this is about the doing of gratitude, not only about having the feeling of gratitude, because Mussar is not just about the feeling, it's also about the doing. Each day, find one person or situation in which it's difficult to feel gratitude, right? Maybe there's somebody who just annoys you every time you see that person, and contemplate what it is that impedes the flow of gratitude in you, right? Becoming aware of what's getting in the way of feeling gratitude. And then maybe at some point you'll be able to say, you'll find something good about that person, or not maybe just everything, but maybe there's one thing that you could feel good about, you could feel grateful about in that person. And each day when you encounter some kind of difficult interaction, try to remember a kindness that the other person has done for you. And it's okay to say, I can't find the kindness. There's one person, I just can't find any kindness in that person. But I think if you really can't find anything kind in that person, maybe there's a reflection of something you're seeing in yourself there. Maybe you're blocked because that person has a trait that you have that you don't like about yourself so much. And so you're not able to access a kind or gratitude feeling toward that person. It's possible. So I just wanted to, this is about Hanukkah, gratitude in Hanukkah, which is a little bit, it's a little story. It's a true story. And so I'm going to read it to you because I think it's a nice way of tying together everything that we've talked about. And then afterwards, of course, I want to hear any reactions that anybody has. So this is a therapist who's living in Jerusalem. I was sitting in a taxi on my way to Jerusalem. The traffic was growing slower, and I began to worry that I'd be late for my clients. It was my first year working as a family therapist, and I had begged my supervisor not to assign me any Hebrew-speaking clients. My Hebrew was decent, but definitely not good enough to understand the necessary emotional nuances in therapy sessions. The couple that I was about to meet was the one exception on my English-speaking client list, and I was really struggling with them. Every time I went with them, they would begin fighting in rapid Hebrew as soon as they sat down, and I couldn't understand a word they were saying. My cell phone rang as the taxi inched its way forward on the road. It was my supervisor. Can you please just assign them, excuse me, to another therapist who can actually understand what they're saying? Excuse me. You can do it. Your Hebrew's good enough. You just need to be a little more confident. Don't give up so easily. Her voice sounded a million miles away as I glanced anxiously out the window and hung up the phone. The taxi driver looked in his rearview mirror. Geweret, madam, miss, he says. Geweret, what's wrong? Did you forget to say thank you to God today? I stared at his bare head and the glittering high necklace. What was he talking about? He said, do you think that today is just another day? Do you think God made these beautiful mountains with this sun setting into them for you to look out the window and frown at the wonders of the creation? What happened? At first, I was so surprised I couldn't speak, but then I decided to tell him in my halting Hebrew about my clients. I had a marriage like that too, he said. We were always fighting. I can't even remember what we used to fight about, but always fighting. And Geweret, I will tell you why, because we didn't know how to say thank you, not to God and not to each other. I'm divorced 3 years now, but it didn't have to be this way. I didn't know what to say. I'm so sorry, I finally answered. It seemed to be the wrong response because the driver began yelling, no, Gavera, don't be sorry. It doesn't help to be sorry. Help them. Stop feeling sorry for yourself and help them. Here, take this. The driver turned around and gave me a tiny blue keychain that had the words thank you written on it in Hebrew. I can't take this, I said, trying to give it back to him. Take it. Give it to them. No, you don't understand. A therapist can't give gifts to her clients. It doesn't work that way. But he waved his hand in protest as we pulled up to the office building. Remember what I said, Geweret. The Creator doesn't make mistakes. Don't forget, today is not just another day. Hesitantly, I slipped the keychain into my pocket and braced myself for the coming session. As soon as the couple sat down, they started to argue. I wasn't even sure that they knew I was there. And after a few minutes, I finally spoke up. I don't understand a word you guys are saying. The husband stopped yelling in mid-sentence and they turned to face me. Which part didn't you understand? The wife asked. All of it. Since you walked into the office, I don't even know what you're fighting about, what you're arguing about. They stared at me in silence. I was so embarrassed. The room began to feel like it was closing in on me. Maybe I should have just kept quiet. Have you tried thanking each other for the little things? I stammered in my American accented Hebrew. The husband erupted. That's the stupidest thing I ever heard. You haven't heard anything we said. Our problems aren't going to go away from thanking each other. Besides, what do I have to thank her for? I wanted to sink into my chair, but then the wife looked at her husband with a half smile. Hold on, maybe there's something there. It's true that we don't say thank you. Maybe we should try. I pulled out the keychain from the cab driver. The husband reached for it and cradled the tiny blue letters in his hand. Thank you, he read out loud, and for the first time he smiled, putting the keychain inside his pocket. Sometimes I wonder where the tiny keychain is today, and I often think about the cab driver's words. Today is not just another day, so say thank you. The sky, the sun, this gift of gratitude, it was made just for you. And Hanukkah is a special time for us to say thank you for all the little and the big miracles in our lives. And when we look into the beautiful, pure flames of the candles, we remember that no day is just another day. There are blessings around all of us every moment, just waiting for us to notice them. This year during Hanukkah, consider the following 3 ways to say thank you, and not just on Thanksgiving. One is to write a letter. And this is in a recent experiment, people were asked to write a short paragraph about someone who had transformed their lives. After they wrote the paragraph, the experimenter handed them a phone and told them to call the person that they just wrote about and read them what they had written. Some of the people didn't know the number. Some people went to cemeteries to read their letter at the gravesite of the person they hoped could hear their appreciation. Others reached out in person to the person they wrote and broke down crying as they read their words out loud. Across the board, the participants' happiness levels rose by as much as 20% from this exercise. So try writing a short Hanukkah card or email to someone that changed your life. It's best if you send it, but even just writing it reminds us how blessed we are to have inspiring people in our lives. And keep a journal of gratitude. On each night of Hanukkah, write down 3 new things that you're grateful for each day. This trains our brains to search for the positive in our lives. After a month of keeping a gratitude journal, people begin to think more optimistically and clearly. They stop constantly scanning the environment for the negative, and they notice other strengths instead of their weaknesses. The time after we light the Hanukkah candles is a good time to reflect on the day's blessings. Share them with your family as you watch the menorah. We look into the flames that shine with hope, and we remember our own ability to turn darkness into light. And act gratefully. Do one small act of kindness each day of Hanukkah. Open the door for someone. Leave a note somewhere that will make somebody smile. Pay for the person's coffee who is behind you in line. Take a coat you never wear and give it to someone on the street. Give an anonymous donation. Smile. Send a Hanukkah gift to someone who needs it. These small actions increase our own feelings of gratitude and create a chain of kindness. And like the tiny blue keychain, we never know how far our gratitude will go. Take this gift and pass it on. So my wish for everyone is may we all experience a wonderful Thanksgiving filled with gratitude for all the good that's in our lives. May we all light the Hanukkah candles and help to light up the darkness in the world. And may we all be blessed with the ability to bring our best selves to each other, to become truly extraordinary, ordinary people. And let us all say amen. Wishing everyone a very happy Thanksgiving.
Happy
And a joyous
Thanksgiving.
Hanukkah. And if anyone has any responses to anything, I'm happy to hear what you have
Thanksgiving.
to say. Happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving, everyone.
Yeah, enjoy the day.
Enjoy.
Thank you.
That was beautiful. That was
Happy
Thank you, Rabbi
Hanukkah.
Perlman. Happy
Beautiful.
Thanksgiving, everybody.
Happy
Thank
Thanksgiving.
you.
Happy
Did
Thanksgiving.
did anybody get to think about if they'd like to study prayer, or if you'd like to study more Mussar? Does anybody have
When
any?
you, when
wanna
you
weigh
say
in?
prayer, what's in your mind?
I was thinking sort of performatory prayer, like things that, like why we do the things that we do and say the things that we say.
I'd be interested in that.
I'd like that.
Yeah,
What's
Some
that?
of the prayers that we say in shul, that we say and say, well, why do we do? Why do we open up the ark, and why do we say that when we open it? Those kinds of things.
Translate those prayers.
What's the alternative? Did you have an
Or
alternative?
I could do more Mussar.
I would rather do more Mussar.
Me too.
I'm for prayer.
For prayer. Okay, prayer. I think
Prayer.
there's more prayers than Mussar, but maybe we'll do more Mussar again. I know I'll find, maybe I'll do one-offs instead of a series of 4. Maybe I'll do one-offs. Because I like it. I like the idea that everybody comes together to study together. And that's the whole idea. And that, I feel like people are really feeling comfortable now talking about the traits. So part of me would think it would be nice to continue, but I'm happy to do the prayer also. I mean, I like it all. So it sounds like there's more prayer.
Yeah.
Mussar.
Good
Good night.
night.
Good night. Guys,
All right, good night,
Thank you,
everyone.
Rabbi.
Thanksgiving.
Thank you
Happy
very much.
Hanukkah, and
Night.
Shabbat Shalom.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us.
Thanksgiving.
Thank you for joining. I've loved learning with you. Good night.
Good night.